Hey guys, it's Eric Walker Ward, live from my living room. Hey, I just wanted to reach out to you, just to kind of, and I first want to segue is that first and foremost, none of my words or opinions or thinking on any topic related to the protests and the problems in our country right now would be meant to offend any one single individual. That would never be my goal, and I think in large part that's probably most people's goal. But in social media, there's a lot of talk how people oftentimes will take things out of context and take words and twist them, and that's fine. But my goal is not to offend anybody. I try to understand what goes on, and then so we can move forward and make change, so we don't repeat the atrocities of our past. And so my goal is just, I think we have a responsibility to be respectful that there's a loss, and my heart goes out. Our prayers are all going out to Mr. Floyd's family, and to me personally, the police officers' families, because when you see one story, one scenario, one act, that is just the tip of the iceberg, because that is a one situation that is usually there's many like that, or there's many problems, and it's multifaceted, and it's been building for some time. And so these problems require sweeping reform. And from my research, one of the biggest problems with sweeping reform is that the short term is very disruptive, inconvenient, almost untenable, almost insurmountable to individuals, families, communities. But and the benefits of that sweeping reform that we need in our country, the benefactors and the beneficiaries, it just never comes fast enough. It's like my bankruptcy. It just wouldn't get over with fast enough. It's one of those things. It's like I can't wait to get to the end, and life's going to be great. And that's the sweeping reform we need. Because it's on an economic level, it's on a communicative level, it's on an educational level. Obviously, our frames of our ways of thinking have impeded our growth as a country to get past the. Used to be it was like African American and white, and now it's like every country in the world almost is represented here in our country, and we lack tolerance, understanding, and that's a problem from like the beginning of our life. I heard on the national media the other day somebody's making fun of a country that I don't know a lot about. And I'm like, I don't appreciate that. I don't even know that country. I know what I know in the news, but I've never been there. I've never interacted with an individual from there. So I don't like people talking bad about them, because what it does is nobody remembers the actors so much. They just remember, or the details of the story set on the national media, they just remember that the country that was involved, and that it was a derogatory statement. So it creates a negative disposition towards that country if we ever meet somebody. And what I find in meeting people from all over the country, 28 countries in my Uber exploit, Europe, people from Burma, people from all over Southeast Asia, Russia, South America. I didn't even know these countries existed. Stupid me, right? But these people are very much like all of us. They like their family, they love their kids, they love their, it's all very common. And so, if we could look for that common ground, it makes things very simple. But the problem here is I just try to understand. So the protest, Chris Hedges talks about promoting nonviolent protests, obviously, and I think, 325 million Americans would agree with that. But not to legitimate or justify any type of horrific acts that across the board would be obviously understood to be unproductive. But that being said, let's understand it. When you talk about prejudice, not just ethnicity, diversity, when you talk about prejudice against socioeconomic and stratification, and people in lower, people that can't have trouble finding work, people that are disabled, people that are downtrodden. There's a lot of prejudice against that, and that prejudice causes a lot of humility, a lot of embarrassment, not only for them internally, but them, in the eyes of their kids, in the eyes of their loved ones. And so it creates a lot of not just frustration and hopelessness, like they said, but helplessness. And then it's a rock and a hard place that there's not a lot of options there. So to understand where that comes from. Like he said, the tinder in these pockets throughout our country where people are like suffering beyond your comprehension, you know, that's where that lash out comes from. And so that needs to be, tempered. But it's not an easy fix. The sweeping reform that our country requires, and I hope they're doing, moving forward, a lot of soul searching up on Capitol Hill in those hallways and committee rooms and boardrooms. I hope they're really trying to figure out a way, because it's so multifaceted from an educational standpoint, from a communication media standpoint, news standpoint, economic standpoint. All these angles need to be, because these are flaws in our, not only our behavior, but our thinking, and then our economic. I mean, it all ties together, you know. So that's the big thing, is that there's just not one person or one small group that causes these problems. These problems that built up for a long time require sweeping change. And from my research about sweeping change, and a lot of people that bring hope get marginalized or assassinated, going back to, going back to the beginning of time, Abraham Lincoln, now MLK, JFK, in the 19th century. These people have all been marginalized, and not just in our country, but in other countries. And that is because a few people like it the way it is. But whatever. But anyway, but they do get marginalized. So, but the sweeping change that we require in our country causes a lot of, like, almost insurmountable, untenable, short-term disruption, pain, inconvenience, a lot of, uncertainty. So it's a hard hurdle to jump. And then, like, the beneficiaries, which would be in large part the middle class, would have to wait so long to gain that foothold to where we're, onto a better plateau. But that's what I understand about sweeping change. The beneficiaries and the benefits just take so long, because the changes are so deep and structural and extensive. So that's my understanding. But we need to do it, and we need to promote it, and I'm getting behind anything I can do. When I got laid off in January, moving into COVID, I said I wanted a social justice job. I mean, I'm a songwriter. I write the songs too, but that's just my emotion. But I want to do something to make a difference in this country, because I love it. And so a lot of it's going to cause a lot of economic, psychological, social disruption, but it needs to be done. And we need them people up on Capitol Hill, because a lot of the anger and frustration gets thrown on people that have nothing to do with the problem. They are just in the middle like us, so if we could just not tear each other apart on the inside and implode that way, because the people that are making the decisions, those are the ones, and the ones that can push the legislation, those are the ones that can make the changes. Like, we're tearing each other apart. A lot of times I see the hatred, but we're not the problem. The problem is up there. They need to make the changes. And then a lot of times those people want to make the changes, from what I understand, but they're held hostage by the oligarchs and the people that hold the big money and the big influence and the big persuasion. And if they don't want to change, then it's not going to happen. So the voices, a lot of the total horrific, actions that are taking place is just the ignored voices and the cries that are just falling on deaf ears up in Capitol Hill, where people can actually make change. So I hate for things to come to that and all of that to happen, but I clearly it's coming to a culminating a situation where something has to be done, and I think that's what they're doing. They're saying enough is enough. So anyway, that's the big thing. And then the last thing, is from an economic standpoint, a lot of the institutions, like the unions and things that were for the middle families, the working class families, the labor, etc., the paying jobs, the healthcare. If you have chronic pain and you can't get medicine, I'm sorry, your life is not enjoyable. It is painful. And so, coming from 5-6 years in long-term care with elderly people, veterans, social security disability recipients, and people and so on and so forth, in those shoes, that is a tough life. And so I pray for those people like I pray for these people, but those people need resources. And so The working families, the jobs, the labor, all that's been dismantled and needs to be rebuilt from the inside out. And then the schools need to promote a new way of thinking and tolerance of not just this diversity, but all diversity, not just African American or Israeli or Russian or Chinese. Like, these people are not that unlike us in large majority. We have universal human elements. And so if we could just kind of get to that common ground, we'll move forward peacefully. Thank you so much. Love you.